G'day everybody and welcome to the panel. My name is Jason Badower, comic book artist for DC, working on Joker, Harley, Criminal Sanity, Volume 2. And I am joined by Marvel Living Library, one of my best bud, Scott Stuart. We are on the road to Deadpool Wolverine, and we're working our way through all the movies. We have so far done Wolverine Origins, X-Men 1, and X-Men 2, and this is the fourth. The Wolverine. There's going to be massive spoilers today because what we're going to do is we're going to go through these movies again so you don't have to, because you've watched them and some of these bear watching again and some of these really do not. This is going to sound either really arrogant or really dismissive, but I forgot that I worked on this movie. I think I had a day or two to pre-visualize a bunch of images to inspire Hugh Jackman for his photo shoot for the website. I've worked on the advertising campaigns of hundreds of movies, and I have to confess that after The Last Stand, I sort of checked out of the X universe, which is probably why I forgot I worked on it. I'm pretty sure I got some really specific direction from my art directors, so the poses here are really realistic rather than comic book stylistic. They had to be stuff that Hugh could do. The emphasis was on the idea itself and capturing Hugh's likeness and expression. They finally agreed on this image for the site, so pretty cool that Hugh Jackman got to see my work and it helped him in some way. I had not seen this before. Had you seen it before, Scott?
I had, yes. I saw it in the cinemas when it came out. Once or twice since. I have the Blu-ray.
Give us your overall thoughts. What do you think?
I think this is a great movie up until about 20 minutes or so before the finish, and then it gets a bit goofy and kind of falls apart. But the journey there, that first 2.5 acts are really good stuff.
They really are. I was so fired up after our conversation last week for when we were talking about X2. I was like, I'm just going to start watching The Wolverine because I normally give these movies several watches. So normally I've seen them before and then I do the rewatch for the stream. And so when I was watching this, I got up to the bit where Mariko and Wolverine sleep together. And I was just having so much fun. I thought it was just incredible. It looked amazing. It felt amazing. I felt they got the action just really right. Everything they were struggling on with Wolverine Origins, they had absolutely solved in this movie. And then I came back several days later to finish it off. And it was like watching a completely different movie. It was just goofy is the absolute word to use it. Just everything from that point onwards. And we'll go through the movie sequentially. And I really just want to mark that point in people's heads that from the moment he wakes up and she's kidnapped, it is just goofball city, almost like a completely different movie. Because it was so jarring to me, I was actually able to watch it with clear eyes, which I'm not normally able to do because I'm usually so wrapped up in a movie. And it's just shocking the cliff that thing fell off towards the end. If you have not watched The Wolverine, as I said, there's a good half film there. Wolverine Origins, I felt like we were actually doing a civic duty helping people not watch that movie. Like, we should have got some sort of tax break for the award to humanity that we are bringing with that last one. But this, it's okay.
I think there's worse ways to spend a couple of hours in the superhero genre, certainly. Wolverine Origins is a prime example of that. I think if you're into the Wolverine canon, then this is a necessary stop, and it's a worthwhile one. Even if only because James Mangold directs, who went on to direct Logan, probably the greatest film in the franchise, and he just elevates the visuals all along the way, covering patches in what is a pretty goofy story here and there. My favorite bit is during the funeral, and Wolverine's walking in and he sees a guy very obviously hiding on the roof and goes, "Oh, won't worry about that." Goes into the funeral, sees a tattoo on a monk and interrupts this public funeral with a display of violence immediately. But the guy hiding on the roof, no, we'll let that slide. That could be just a cultural thing.
It's funny you mentioned that because James Mangold was doing such a good job. His cinematographer was just fantastic. The whole approach to it was so grounded. I was really enjoying it. So I was able to forgive it these sort of little things. And I'm like, I think he should be better hidden. There's no doubt about that. But I just let that go. But there is so much wackiness in this film. If you're into Wolverine, yes, absolutely go watch the movie. Like, I was a Wolverine fan and had not got around to it. There is an absolutely fantastic half a movie here. And the other half is just fine. So I think it's worth watching if you're a Wolverine fan.
Absolutely. If you're a fan of X-Men The Last Stand, I assume somebody somewhere is. Out in the world, people are into weird sadomasochistic stuff, so being into X-Men The Last Stand is possible, and if you are, this film follows up on the events of that rather directly.
And one of the things that continues to shine through all these movies is Hugh Jackman. I just think he is absolute gold on screen every time, every second as Wolverine. There's not a single scene that I look at that I'm like, I think you phoned that in. I just think he brings it every single time. And I think this is absolute apex Wolverine as far as I'm concerned.
I cannot argue with you about Hugh Jackman. Actor steps up every time he's on the screen. Immensely charismatic dude and commits to the role. This Wolverine is a little bit more relaxed, a bit more go with the flow than I would traditionally think of Wolverine being. So I don't know if it's up there in the most iconic, most comics accurate Wolverine. But yeah, just simply as a performance in its own right in this role, he is marvelous.
I'm a little bit more forgiving about that because different creative teams come on and work on different books all the time, and they all bring a different sensibility. And while it is the same character, and they absolutely took all the sort of quipping out of the character, this is a far more emotionally damaged Wolverine. He's a lot of stuff to work on. And as you mentioned, The Last Stand is very much affected by the results of that movie. Still cannot bring myself to watch that again. My thing is that while it is a very different Wolverine, I still feel that it is still Wolverine to me. And what I mean by an apex sort of performance is that in terms of one of the tent poles of how he looks, how he feels, definitely the environment of what he's around with. And we'll get to some of the scenes where he very much does go with the flow in ways that you're just like, I don't know if Wolverine would do that or care. Jackman just brings it. Like visually, this is his biggest step up. He's put on like 20 pounds of muscle. I was listening to an interview with his trainer, which worked with him for 9 months. The Rock gave him some advice. He was to eat like 6,000 calories a day of just chicken breasts and proteins. And before he did his shirtless scenes, he didn't drink any liquid for 36 hours. And so he's headachy and dizzy while trying to do his fight choreography. Every time he brings such gravitas to it that he covers up how flimsy the material is that he's working with. He's really good.
Elevates the material, absolutely.
The writers are an interesting bunch. You got A. Scott Frank, who did Out of Sight, which I love. He went on to write Logan, and then also did The Queen's Gambit. I don't know if you've seen that, but that is a phenomenal TV series. And then Mark Bombach, Free or Die Hard, a lot of the Planet of the Apes films, obviously this.
Some of the Planet of the Apes movies are good.
It's true. Very solid, actually. And then, yeah, James Mangold, 3:10 to Yuma, Walk the Line, and obviously went on to do Logan. And it's really interesting to see that when you have a team that really can learn from their mistakes and their experiences, can sometimes actually elevate. This movie, somewhere around 100 to 132 million, made 414 million. So yeah, there's an ROI that they were quite willing to let this team come back to the party.
Full credit to Mangold. It is a great looking movie. He's cinematographer as well. Ross Emery is the cinematographer. Really? Dark City, The Matrix, Woody Woodpecker Goes to Camp. He did Alien Covenant related stuff.
Maybe he directed some of the stuff that I worked on. I did a bunch of ancillary stuff for Covenant, storyboarded things.
Did you work on something with Walter or with...
With Walter.
Yeah, he worked on that as cinematographer.
Sweet. I never actually saw it, so I've no idea if it ever got made. One of the strengths of all the X-Men movies is they generally have really good starts, and this is no exception. I think starting in August 1945, Nagasaki, Japan.
Wolverine is a prisoner in this prisoner of war camp, and for obvious reasons, being Wolverine, he's in solitary confinement, which is a well with a tank-type lid on the top of it to seal him in. But Wolverine, being Wolverine, is able to scale the well in and out as often as he likes.
And the bomb is dropped. I found out why that there's not crazy levels of radiation the other day. Why Hiroshima and Nagasaki are still towns and not radioactive wastelands. They detonate them well above the ground. And it's apparently the contact with the ground that causes the radiation. So when they airburst them, they cause a shockwave, but not as much radiation involved. We've met Yoshida, who spots the bombs, and he rescues the American POWs, and Wolverine saves him from committing seppuku.
Saves the dude by throwing him into the bottom of a well, then taking part of that metal door and shielding him while absorbing the blast and frying himself in a pretty impressive makeup job.
They did a great job of him healing from that too. It doesn't look like it's just being airbrushed away. It literally looks like everything's being healed. I've seen other people joke that, oh, and his hair grows back perfectly too. I think that's just how his body remembers his hair. Like, it's his genetic memory for his hair. And it also explains why later on when he gets shaved and cleaned by the Japanese women, he probably still looks exactly like that, because it probably just grows back instantly. He's stuck with 11 o'clock stubble every day. That's just how he rolls.
Those are full-on mutton chops he rocks.
I think they're back in fashion too. So what I love is that he then wakes up and he is sleeping next to Famke Janssen, Jean Grey. And she's like, where were you? Oh, I was dreaming of Nagasaki. I just love that it's his sexy ghost is sort of his guilt throughout the entire movie. And he killed her in the last movie, in X-Men The Last Stand. And he's promised that he won't hurt anyone ever again. And he's isolated himself because he wakes up again. It's like Inception. He's dreaming of a dream. Any other thoughts on Famke Janssen? Or that scene? I know you have thoughts on Famke Janssen. Can we corral them to something appropriate?
I'm only human.
As is James Mangold by her costume choice for the entire movie.
Look, having a dream relationship be this sort of core relationship throughout the movie was an odd choice, because she can't interact with any of the other characters, and we're not really getting her perspective. It's not really her, it's him. His subconscious projecting this dream. It's really interesting how that relationship evolves, how she's able to question him at a couple of points through the movie, which, it's a little bit of screenwriting in there.
I saw her as a manifestation of his guilt and his desire to die. I really enjoyed the conversations between the two, because it was like in comic books we get captions, and if you've read the limited series that this is based on, there's so many captions of Wolverine just talking directly to us the entire time. We are absolutely in first person listening to his narrative. And so by having this sort of communication, these dream scenes allows us to get his interior monologue with another person in a way that I think for me felt very obvious. And I enjoyed it.
I thought it did a good job positioning this film in time after the events of Last Stand, and by the end of the movie, we're marching into Days of Future Past.
He wakes up and he's in the Yukon, the Canadian Rockies somewhere, and this is taken very close to the graphic novel. I don't know if you've read the 1982 limited series, Claremont Miller Wolverine.
Of course I have, but not for many years.
Yeah, it was a long time for me too. It was fantastic. Really holds up. I think in some ways it is far superior to the movie. The complexity of the stakes that Claremont manages to get Wolverine into are really interesting. And I'll go over them when we get to it. But this scene is almost right out of the graphic novel, where he's hunting a crazed bear. But in the movie, where he has that relationship with the bear, where they're each like marking each other's claws on the tree, like peeing over each other's territory. He's out of batteries for his dead radio, so he goes into town and sees a whole bunch of Yobro hunters. And I really like the line too, "You a hunter?" And it's not anymore. And then he goes back to his little nook, and that night he hears screams and he sees the bear. And that bear is actually animatronic. They built that solid giant thing there. Obviously, the one that's walking through the woods is CGI by Weta, but this one was actually physically built.
It lends gravitas, because Wolverine actually gets to interact with the bear. You can't get that sort of relationship with a CGI bear, especially not back then.
In the comics, he's already tracking the crazed bear. He's already seen the damage that it's done. So we come in at the point where he wakes up that night, and that's where the comic starts, of him hunting the bear. He tracks it back to its lair, its cave, and it ambushes him and then is forced to kill it. In this, he has to put it down, and then he goes to the bar and tracks the hunter down who had poisoned it and not killed the bear. I thought it was pretty nice that he just stabs the guy through the hand with an arrow and is just, if it's not poison, then you're not in any trouble now, are you? The scene goes south as a fight breaks out, and then we meet Yukio. Ryla Fukushima. I really enjoyed her character in the movie. What did you think of Yukio?
She did a great job. She was a good foil for Wolverine. Almost a good buddy cop pairing there. Yeah, she was great.
Wolverine always has a younger female sort of sister-like character in his journeys in the comics. He is Kitty Pryde, he is Jubilee, someone else I'm forgetting, and Yukio was pretty much filling that role. And I only really got it when at the end she's, I'm your bodyguard. And it's, oh yeah, it's absolutely, like she's totally the sidekick here. I don't know if you've seen that guy that does those wonderful pitch meetings where he plays the studio exec and then the writer. And so it's, oh yeah, I turned foreshadowing into a character because she could see someone's death. I think she moves great, she kicks ass. What got me, which I'm really confused about, is, do you remember Deadpool 2? Negasonic Teenage Warhead has a girlfriend. Japanese girlfriend, that is also Yukio. So I don't know if they just took the name, appropriated the name, because in the comics, Yukio is an assassin who works for Shingen, who is the lead bad guy, who in this movie is played Hiroyuki Sanada, who's just so good. I just watched him in Bullet Train. But in the comic book, Shingen is the main bad guy, and Yukio is an assassin that works for Shingen, and her and Wolverine fall in love and go off partying while she's supposed to be killing him, and she doesn't and kill him, and so she turns on Shingen because of him. And yeah, it's a far more complicated, different relationship. But this again is where one of those things that you are probably talking about, where Wolverine is really going along with the flow. The whole idea that he even gets in the car is one of those things like, why?
Look, at the very least, you've got to be curious about the sword-wielding Japanese schoolgirl-looking character who comes in and slices up the bar with immaculate precision. You've at least got to find out what that's about, I'm sure, even if your intent is to just bugger off back to the woods and be grumpy.
I know the movie is really dealing with themes of lasting those around you and having a reason to go on. Jean Grey says at some point in the movie, everyone you love dies. And so Wolverine has pulled himself away from society, that if he never loves or connects with anybody ever again, then nobody else will die that he cares about. In retrospect, while I was really enjoying the movie, and this again is only one of those things that I thought about after, it's like, why does he get in the car? Like, why does he go to Japan? And it comes down to not having a really great definition of what is bothering him, and her able to peel that back for a moment for us to go, oh yes, that's why he would go to Japan. It just seems like curiosity, and it's a little bit wishy-washy. But here's the big thing.
If he doesn't do it, the movie doesn't happen?
There's that. There's a whole bunch of times in this movie where there's another massive one, which could just end the movie in 15 minutes. How does he even remember Yoshida? He took an adamantium bullet to the brain, wiped all his memories, but somehow he remembers Yoshida.
Yeah, that hadn't actually occurred to me, and now that it has, it's like the Indiana Jones doesn't do anything in Raiders of the Lost Ark thing. Wow, that is a very fine question.
He would not remember the bomb. He would not remember being there. He would not remember Yoshida. And if he had, that's where he would have gone if, instead of wandering around the Canadian Rockies on instinct, which is the impression that I got, he would have remembered, oh yeah, I knew a guy in Japan. Maybe he knows who I am. And he would go over and find him. Look, if I had to be absolutely kind, I would say that Professor X's and Jean Grey's meddling around in there has sparked this memory.
If Yukio had turned up with a picture of the two of them together, she would have this clue about his past that he would be incentivized to follow. But then I guess you don't get the excuse for that lovely, well-shot flashback / dream sequence that really did start the film well.
You have to start the film well, because you got to have this great high and then it's all just downhill from there. But if you start really high, you get to the slide goes for, hopefully makes it to the end of the movie, right? But if you don't have that peak at the start, you're just crawling along.
I think it was last week I brought up that George Lucas quote, all the film really needs is a great first 5 minutes and a great last 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Logan travels to Japan, and we has that brief moment where they remind us that Wolverine hates flying for no reason whatsoever. And even then, it's only sometimes. We discover her power that she can see people's deaths. They get to Japan, we see the Yoshida Corporation everywhere. They go to the compound, they go through a metal detector. We get that really funny thing where it's just like hip replacement, which I thought was a great line. And we see Shingen fighting, and Shingen in the comics is the main bad guy of the Chris Claremont and Frank Miller series, who is Mariko's father. We see Yoshida. I realized there's always that mutant tech in every X-Men movie. So X-Men 1, Magneto had his device which turns people into mutants. Wolverine Origins, they are able to take mutant powers out of people and put them into other people, which I realize it's exactly, again, what they're doing here. So if you watched Wolverine Origins, you hadn't watched any of the X-Men movies, it is pre-established tech in the same way that X2 took Cerebro, which was established in the first movie, and then extrapolating that again. Because at the start, I was like, what? Why? And then I realized, oh no, this is canon. This has been established. So hats off to them for that.
I can absolutely get behind suppressing Wolverine's healing ability. I can get behind having a method to take that ability and put it into Yoshida, but I don't get why that has to stop Wolverine from using his once they've copied this genetic thing and put it into, or use the spider to replicate it in the other dude. They're not taking that part out of all of his cells and putting it individually into all of the other dude's cells. So why did Wolverine's healing ability have to stop working as part of this arrangement?
It's weird too, because if we are to skip to the end when the guy is sucking his healing factor out, she stabs him in the head, and why doesn't he heal? Like, does he have the healing factor or not? Does nobody have the healing factor? Is it one of those things where it's just two halves do not make a whole? Like, how? What? I'm so confused now.
I think his plan was to walk around with the corpse of Logan hanging off his fists for the rest of time.
Even Wolverine Origins, like, we got the idea that you need to have the mutant, and then they do something surgical with it, and then it gets the abilities. And in that case, they don't even need to take Scott's eyeballs out to give the Deadpool the powers. He just undergoes surgery in some way, shape, or form. But knowing how that works, it would have been, I think, really important for this movie. Like, even for Logan to just be like, how? How are you going to do that? Like, how does that work? I can't believe he doesn't ask that. It's just absolutely basic question.
You can ask how it works, but would he understand the answer? And if you know in advance you're not going to understand the answer, then what use is asking the question?
It's also like asking if you're going to have the difference between a spinal tap and an injection. One is going to be debilitating pain and the other one is going to be mild discomfort. Oh, we're going to chop your claws off, drill up through the shafts, and suck your genetic code out like that. Yeah, that's a no. I'm out. Thank you. Immortality sounds pretty good to me right now. Because here's the other failure of the movie. And this is again only because you want to know when all these things don't come together at the end, what a movie is setting up, and why I was still having a really good time on the first watch. But when you go back and watch on the second watch, Wolverine needed to be at an emotional point where he should have considered it. He should have been like, maybe. And Yoshida should have been like, just think of it. Because if he's not emotionally in that point, what's the point of asking the question in the movie? Your whole movie hinges on it. It is about immortality, outlasting people, dying, and possibly having had enough. And that's pretty much where I thought he was. And for him to just be like, no, I'm good. It's just, what question are we asking of this character? There is no essential question if he doesn't consider that and just be like, maybe?
It was a weird moment. It deflated everything. There were a lot of those moments around that time. Like Mariko's suicide attempt. Why? What was that in aid of? He even asks at one point and doesn't get an answer. And her father asks later on and she says, never wanted to kill myself. Well, then what the were you doing?
Were you just running into the rain? Jeez, if you're not going to commit suicide, you can come out and say that like that. It'd be very explicit. Otherwise, what on earth are you doing? Here is the biggest one. I'm going to jump ahead to the poison dream. We'll come back to this scene because there's more to unpack for the bigger scene. But right now, we're unpacking moments of what the heck in this movie. Here's where the movie could have just ended right now. He drinks poison tea. Viper then poisons him, puts her little thing inside him. He's poisoned. He's double poisoned. Wrap him up right away. Just take him off to your little healing factor extraction facility. Just tie him up, get a whole bunch of people. He's not going to last much longer. He's only human now. Why do we have the entire rest of the movie? It should just be over right there. Why would you let him go? Why would you fake your death and not take him with you?
Because the rest of the movie needs to happen.
Can't have an 18-minute Wolverine movie. That's why.
It wouldn't be eligible for Oscar consideration.
But because I didn't know what Yoshida's plan is, I just want to go over Yoshida's plan because it's absolutely, like, it's not quite piss in a jar ridiculous. There's reference to Batman versus Superman. It's just stupid. All right, so let's see if we can unpack this. Because at the time, because when you're watching it, you don't know. You don't know what his plan is. You don't know why because you know he's not dead, but you don't know what's going on. But when you get to the end of it, and you're like, wait up, all right. So you got this dude, he's rescued by Logan, and becomes obsessed with his healing factor, creates that mutant extraction process, builds a suit of giant silver samurai armor that is his means to suck Wolverine's healing factor out.
Bone marrow.
Go on.
What I got from the conclusion, basically, he chops off the claws and then drills into the base of the claws. If he chopped off fingers and drilled into the fingers, that's basically what he's doing, but except with the claws. So he's getting into the bone marrow in order to perform this medical procedure. So that in and of itself makes sense, and you need an adamantium suit to get through the adamantium-laced skeleton to get anywhere near the bone marrow.
Yeah, again, if you drugged him and you beat him until he's unconscious, you tie him up, you put him into that device that holds his hands there. Instead of buying a giant silver samurai suit, you just have a guillotine, much cheaper. You just cut the claws off, you drill in there, and you take what you need. You don't need a giant silver samurai suit just because it was in the comics. And the real silver samurai is currently behind Scott right now. Harada, who's played by William Lee in the movie, that's the other weird thing. Everybody who's a mutant in the comics is not a mutant in this movie, and everybody who's human in the comics is a mutant in this movie. Because we also meet Viper, and in the comics, she's not Madam Hydra, is she? Is she Madam Hydra?
Yes. Yeah, she is.
Yes. For those of you wondering, yes, Hail Hydra, that Hydra. She's the head of Hydra. And for some reason, she's also a snake mutant person because reasons.
She does have poison powers. I don't remember if she's a mutant.
I don't think she is. I think she just has poisons. Toxin immunity. She has rendered herself immune to most toxins via controlled exposure. Yeah, no powers. I want to come back to Yoshida's plan. I don't understand why he fakes his own death. I don't understand why he gives his company to the granddaughter, because he's not actually going to die. Like, here's the thing. If he thought he would not survive the procedure, he would go, okay, I'm not going to give it to Shingen because I'm going to give it to my granddaughter because I know that if I do survive the procedure and I come back, she will give the company back to me. Shingen will never give it back to me. That I get. But I don't understand why there's nothing that insinuates that he might die from this procedure. We never see a scene between him and Viper discussing that. So that's pure headcanon conjecture. There's no reason for him to fake his death whatsoever. He would have poisoned Wolverine, shipped him up, gone off to the mountains, done his procedure, come back and just been like, hello everybody, I'm much better now. No need to fake your own death or anything.
I'm also 80 years younger somehow. I think is the bit you need to overcome. So he wouldn't have been able to re-enter society as himself. But some sort of weird incesty thing where he takes on a pseudonym and marries the granddaughter.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't go the whole distance with that. But yes, that would be the absolutely logical explanation there.
But again, that's headcanon because it's not in the film.
Right.
No one in the film says bone marrow. Me assuming that's why they have to chop his knuckles off and drill there is headcanon. If only there was a scientist character in the movie who could have explained the science of this to us in their science laboratories. Either one of the two science laboratories while doing the science. I expect technobabble. I don't expect blueprints and logical, even realistic science, but just some explanation, some thought.
What I call story science, and that is just science that sounds plausible enough to create the events of the story and why they need to occur in such a thing. Oh, this procedure takes 3 days. Okay, it takes 3 days. That's fine. Or it takes 1 hour, however long it takes. Just as long as the movie conforms to that timeline, that's what I call science story. Then why would he have a will and leave it to his granddaughter? Why would he even tell her? So she tells Shingen, and I believe that's why they have their argument. Because he can't believe it, and that's why he slaps her, like, because he's grossly unhappy about that. So Shingen then, who's working with the Yakuza, has the Yakuza go to kidnap and do a hit on his daughter so that he can then inherit the company. I just don't understand why you would even have a will or tell anybody about it. To keep Wolverine here, to hope to appeal to his protective instincts, to get him to stay in Japan while he goes off, installs himself into the Silver Samurai armor. If Viper had said, hey, it's going to take, now that he's here, we need 3 days to install you for the extraction process. He's like, all right, take me away. We need a way to keep him here. I know. I'll tell him there's an attack on my daughter. And this is all, again, headcanon. Because none of this is explained in the movie. I just have to be like, that is the most logical explanation that I can come up with. But there's a lot of ifs there.
There's a lot of ifs and it's a lot of work to go to as well. It's not the audience's job to fill in all these blanks, to resolve these questions. That's the job of the filmmakers, I'm sorry. Whatever medium it may be, it's okay to have questions, it's okay to be ambiguous, but these aren't thematic questions about the human soul. They're basic, why is this happening questions about the plot we're presented with.
And look, none of us like when the head villain at the end of the movie starts ranting their plan, but I would have liked that here, for him to be like, and I knew you would stay if I told you my granddaughter was in danger, which kept you here long enough for me to get into the armor and whatever. Like, just something that would have just let me be like, oh, somebody considered this. Oh, there's some sort of reason to this rhyme. Because as it is, it just seems like you should have just poisoned him, knocked him out, and then taken him off to your compound and sucked his healing factor out. That seemed like it would have been much easier. Which still could have worked as a movie, because then you have Wolverine weakened, fleeing from this compound, being hunted by ninja and all sorts of people across Japan as he's weak, while trying to find out what's going on. There's a movie there, but it's not this movie.
One line. I've implanted the device, but it will take 2 days before it reaches maximum efficiency. So you've got to keep him on the line, and that at least justifies spinning some plates and occupying him for a bit.
But a fake funeral to hoping that he will still look after your granddaughter, that's pushing it.
If you can spend, I think they said $500 million or whatever it was on this science complex in the mountains, surely you can spend $1,000 and build as well as they did in 1945 and just go, shove, slam. That should hold you for a few days. All you need is a hole in the ground.
You already have a machine that is designed to hold Wolverine in place. I would have brought that. You just poison him. You keep poisoning him with poison arrows and all sorts of stuff. Eventually he falls down. You put him in the machine. Movie over. You shit it. You could have walked away and immortal, but you messed it up. You overcomplicated it.
He's that wrestler who gets arrogant and lifts his opponent off the mat, doesn't take the clean victory, and then the babyface turns it around and snatches victory from the jaws of defeat because of that arrogance. It's a tale as old as time.
Oh my God. So then the old man dies. Wolverine is poisoned. He wakes up and Yukio is like, I didn't foresee it. But everybody saw that he wasn't dead.
I will give them credit, actually, that Yukio seeing Logan's death in the same way does at least foreshadow that gap in her powers where she can be misled by a death event that is die and then get resuscitated. But still, technically, she could foresee that death, and they've established that at least in the way that Logan died but immediately came back.
I guess my point is that the way the movie was done is that I just knew the old guy was coming back. Everybody knew the old guy was coming back. And so when I didn't foresee death, it's because he's probably not dead because of Hollywood rules. I'm sorry, Hollywood, but sometimes you are your own worst enemy.
Script efficiency is a thing that when you learn these rules and these tricks, a line in the script that makes it to the screen is there for a specific reason, especially one that's out of place, and it tells you something new about the world. That's all should always come back and come into play later in the movie.
Oh yeah, look, I knew for a fact that he was going to come back. I just wasn't sure how, wasn't sure why, and I was really excited for it. And the reason that I got did not live up to the anticipation that they created in that. He's at the funeral. We have no idea why he's at the funeral. We've established. We have no idea why everybody can't see William Lee on top of them. Mariko's childhood boyfriend. Done a whole bunch of roles. My favorite role of his is he's the lead voice actor in a game called Sleeping Dogs, which is about a Hong Kong detective who goes undercover into the gang world. And it's The Departed. Oh wait, The Departed was based on Infernal Affairs, which is a Hong Kong action movie about detectives going undercover. Will Young Lee is the main character and he just absolutely rocks it so hard. That's where I remembered his name from years later. Like I went to the IMDb to be like, who is this guy? He's so good. And he has nothing to do in this movie. And what breaks my heart is that he's one of the main foils of the X-Men. Do you want to talk about the Silver Samurai, Scott? What do you remember about him?
He's a mutant. He canonically fights the X-Men single-handedly more than once.
He can channel his energy into his tachyon blade. He's been an adversary for the X-Men, for Daredevil, for multiple characters. He had a son who also became the Silver Samurai, who was named after his grandfather, Shingen. In the comics, Shingen has 2 kids. One of them is Mariko, his legitimate daughter, and he has Harada, his illegitimate son. And Harada is the Silver Samurai. Harada then has another son, who he named Shingen after his grandfather, who calls himself Shin, who also has a sort of a suit of armor that is also actually a little bit more similar to the Silver Samurai armor that we see in this movie. Why do we get this weird robot thing? He's a mutant. Just go with it. If he is the Silver Samurai, let's pretend he's not a ninja, he's the Silver Samurai, because he still has the tachyon blade. And at the end, Yoshida has to convince him to cut Wolverine's claws off. That's hardcore. That's far more interesting than what we got.
Character drama?
Yeah.
Bah humbug.
Bah humbug. Back to the funeral. Apart from the wibbly-wobbly reason this whole thing occurred, I thought it was just a wonderfully shot and choreographed sequence. I've walked the line between superheroic and grounded, and this sequence just keeps going all the way through until they get onto the bullet train. Had a ton of fun with it.
Yeah, apart from that sort of weird behavioral choice, it was a great and propulsive scene. Being a sheltered white boy in a very white country, I do wonder how sensitive this movie is. It seems very cliched in its presentation of Japan. I know the original story was, but in the 80s, that happened a lot more, and we needed to meet the cliches to get to know the wider culture at that time. But yeah, I just wonder, sometimes, it's, ooh, really? All of this?
I agree. Look, completely in Chris Claremont's defense, you're talking about a guy living probably in the middle of some part of America who's never been to Japan. I got the impression he did a ton of research. I don't believe Chris Claremont had that sort of resource. For 1982, I think he did a bang-up job. But as far as this film goes, did they have cultural consultants? I don't know. Because it's, yeah.
I don't know that it's offensive. It just hit cliche after cliche. Ninjas, Yakuza, winding mountain streets, cherry blossoms. It became like a lot, and I bounced off it a little bit. And the funeral scene is one of the ones that did it, where he makes a choice to interrupt a very public national funeral because he saw a tattoo.
Is it too on the nose? Dunno. Can't answer that.
I don't think it's our place to answer it, but I think we can acknowledge that at least there's a question. Certainly there was for me. Maybe I'm just oversensitive in this modern era.
It's also it's a superhero movie, so I'd wonder if it slides through the gaps like that, being like, let's get all these sort of action things that Westerners would understand from Japan.
I didn't have this reaction when Spider-Man Far From Home went to the canals of Venice, had a scene set next to Big Ben on London Bridge.
Yeah.
I've certainly not read any complaints.
I will be in Venice in about 3 weeks, so I will go around and ask the locals for you. Were you offended by Spider-Man Far From Home?
Ask if they've seen Night Monkey lately.
I'll do that for you. So then they get on a bullet train, and they have an incredibly awkward conversation across the aisle about how she's in so much danger from 7 feet away. It's really awkward. Wolverine goes into the toilet, and we get that great scene where he realizes that he's not healing. More thugs follow, and there is an absolutely awesome fight on the top of the bullet train. I thought it was just so over the top, but so much fun. Really good scene.
Great scene. Absolutely great scene. It's not really telling part of the plot, which is the silly part of this movie. And so it's just the great fight choreographers and the great cinematographer and the great director and the quality actors and stunt team putting together a really great and compelling scene. I thought it stood up really well. Comparing it to things like the freeway chase in Matrix Reloaded and even Bullet Train, the recent Brad Pitt vehicle, which you mentioned earlier, compares well to things like that.
They're both great comparisons, actually, because all three are almost emotionally empty, very fun, very beautiful, well choreographed, spectacular looking movies. You reach for two really good comparisons. And here's also, I'm going to get to this now, because I think this is really where it comes to a head. James Mangold is obsessed with weakening Wolverine. And I call this the Superman problem. You have a character that's too powerful. We need to depower him so that I can actually tell meaningful stories about him. Because in James Mangold's mind, unless Wolverine is struggling, like it's his healing factor, it's his immortality that somehow removes the drama for James Mangold. But here's the thing, it's all fake drama. John McClane takes more damage than any other human being should in every movie that he goes through. We never question it, he just does and he gets through. The thing about Wolverine, and I'm going to use one of your favorite $20 words, is he has a diegetic reason why he can take so much ridiculous punishment. And to be able to remove that and just put instead all this fake drama of, oh, his healing factor is working, he's still not going to die by the end of the movie. The movie has his goddamn name on it. It's his superhero story. He's not going to die. You don't need... How do you feel about that, removing Wolverine's powers all the time? His healing factor.
Look, you're not wrong. I'm not concerned about the frequency with which he hits the note, because he's done it twice. And the second time in the context of what you just said wouldn't happen. The characters... Sorry, guys, spoiler alert. Plug your ears for a second if you haven't seen Logan and you're watching these along with us for some bizarre reason. So plug your ears for Logan. But his name's on the the title of the movie and he dies at the end. I get your complaint, and it means we don't get the Wolverine that we know doing these cool things. We get a somewhere between Wolverine and James Bond doing these things. And that's not really what we as comic fans want out of it. It's not the biggest bugbear for me, particularly in the context of the second film, and not really in the context of the villain's goals in this film.
I think it works really well in Logan. I think it works
less well here, yes.
Because it's pointless. It's absolutely pointless. The thing is, Wolverine is unstoppable, but you cannot kill him in the same way that we all know that in the 99.99% of Hollywood films, the main character is not going to die. It's fake drama, but he has a way to recover from that. Wolverine can still fail. You put him against the clock. The bullet train scene was so exciting because if he gets knocked off that train, he's never going to find Mariko again. That's the end of the mission for him. If that were a video game and he got knocked off the train, that would be a fail state. You die, end of game. It's not that he dies, it's just that he will never find Mariko again. Wolverine can absolutely fail. He can't die. Doesn't mean he can't fail. Doesn't mean the people around him don't die. In fact, that's the very core crux of what the movie's on about. And it is like, how does he keep these people alive? And so for me, just having him hurt and bleeding and mortal is just pointless, especially when the whole movie is about, I've heard stories of the Kazuri that could survive anything, that it could do it, and she gets this shattered, hollow version of him. And it's, lady, you never actually got to see what your grandfather was talking about. And also too, if you are new to these sort of films, you never get to see his healing factor is the MacGuffin for the movie, and you never even get to see it. He has two fights. He has the fight with Shingen, and then he has the fight with the ninja at the end. It gets arrowed to unconsciousness. What's the point? What's the point? You took it away, he gets beaten, you give it back to him, he gets beaten. Just give it to him the entire... I just thought it was fake drama. It was trying to create tension and drama because it had no other way to create that tension and drama. What it should have been doing was putting Mariko in more danger instead of having her just sitting there the entire time. She walks in the door being like, Logan, are you okay? And then he has to protect her while fighting those guys. That's what Wolverine does. / end rant.
Tell us what you really think.
Quick PSA that there's one of these deep dives coming each week. Please consider subscribing and the algorithm gods will let you know when the next one is up. And if you consider popping your claws on that like button, that'd mean the world to us. And maybe you'll help this video get to another Wolverine fan so that they can join the chat too. Or maybe just send it to a Wolverine fan that you know. Anyway, they stay at a love hotel because it's funny and awkward and reasons. And I think it's in an extended cut because I didn't see them get attacked by the Yakuza, but I see other people intimated they get attacked by the Yakuza again. Mariko shows off her knife throwing skills and then takes Wolverine to the vet, the lady's son. The version that I saw on Disney Plus, there's no Yakuza fight. I just got it that he just passes out from his wound.
Oh, that answers that question then. Yes, there is an extended cut. I think it adds about 10 minutes, I want to say, probably a little less to the film. It was fine. It was visually stunning in that sort of Blade Runner-ish lighting view of Tokyo we often get that goes all the way to films like Black Rain and Rising Sun. It bugged me because it gave Mariko the potential for so much more agency in this film than she gets through any of it that actually made it into theaters. In that moment, she's not just a damsel in distress, but then throughout the rest of the movie, that's basically all she is.
Her lack of agency, as I said, she should have been involved in the bullet train fight. She should have been holding on to Wolverine or doing stuff or just been there, being useful, rather than just listening to music completely oblivious to everything that's going on. And I think that they wrote enough backdrop for her to be like, how can you do all this? It's, I have the best instructors. I'm trained. I grew up on the streets with Harada. And you're just like, okay. My point is, I've never seen a movie work so hard to establish someone's bona fides. And then we very rarely ever, in the theatrical cut or the one that is on Disney Plus, the only time she uses her knives is to kill her grandfather at the end when she throws Wolverine's claws at him. If you'd wrapped Yukio and Mariko's role together, I think you would have had a really interesting... In the comics, it's on the run with Yukio. She is a ninja, and so she is able to hold her own very effectively. Yeah, it's just a weird ball drop to not have Mariko be involved like on the front lines like that.
It's Chekhov's gun, but they never pulled the trigger in a way.
100%! That's exactly what it is. There's a bomb under the table. We never let the bomb go off. Why would you do all this work and not use it? So we have Viper and Harada meet up. She's 2 hours late. We establish more poison breath. And look, I hate to say it, but what's her name? Svetlana Kochenkova. She's probably the only person who has made acting choices that are really dissonant with everybody else. I feel like everybody else is playing it really real, and she's playing it very Bond level big.
She's in Batman and Robin level camp mode, and everybody else is doing this gritty crime story, at least till we get to the end of the movie.
Yes. When everybody just turns into a Bond villain. Yeah, and we realize that she works for Yoshida, and then the Yakuza are being manipulated by somebody else. We go back to the Southern home, and that is, again, where we get the line about that she's the knife champion that we never get to see, and we see her relationship with the boyfriend. And here is when we learn that she's now the inheritor of Yoshida Industries. Because I think if we'd learned it earlier, it would have been like, but then why would you... But enough has happened that we could just forget it. And that she has an arranged marriage to Noburo, who is also in the comics, but he's one of Shingen's lieutenants or someone that he owes. He's another criminal, basically, that he gives his daughter to in marriage. And he beats her in the comics. Like, when Wolverine finally reaches her, she's black and blue and bruised to hell. It's beautiful art by Frank Miller. Frank Miller in this comic sort of has his storytelling style, which is very gestural, very chiaroscuro and noir. And then every now and then, he'll do these beautiful portraits of characters, like usually one every issue, where he just renders the hell out of the page. And the one of where you finally see Mariko is beautifully drawn, but something very horrible.
Yeah, Frank's great at really drawing horrible things beautifully. Made a career out of it in the end.
Yes, it's pretty much how we all make a career. Like, I got to the point with Joker Harley where at one point Cammy was like, can you draw stomach intestines? She goes, I'm going to send you some photos of some stomach intestines. I'd really like you to capture this texture, please. And it's like, I realized that I had to draw the line with burns. I can't look at real life burns for some reason. Everything else I'm fine with, wounds, organ, everything like that. But for some reason I can't deal with burns. That's my horrible thing, line in the sand. We have to give those pages to Miko.
I'm going to write you a script about a horribly scarred firefighter who volunteers at a burns ward.
Mariko and Yukio talk. The village need help with the tree. Because it's a solo Wolverine film, we are required to have a compulsory lumberjacking scene. That's where we get it in this movie. He finds the hole where he rescued Yoshida. Flashback to the hole, and here's where we learn you hold the Japanese sword with 2 hands, even though the samurai can activate the sword with 1 hand. He specifically does it. It's like
the Silver Samurai has 2 swords, which he dual wields throughout the majority of the fight. But yeah, it takes Wolverine putting a second hand on it to activate the ion blade, I guess it is.
Literally one of the times that he cuts Wolverine's claws off is with 1 hand. And it's, but what? And how do you tell the difference between 2 human hands and a robot hand? Or is 2 human hands equal to 1 robot hand, which means the 2 hands thing doesn't matter because it's not proper sword form?
That could be it. There's 2 buttons on it, like a safety. You've got to hit both buttons to activate the thing. You don't want to be polishing your tachyon blade and have it accidentally go off.
Yeah.
So...
They go back to the house. They get it on. He's been having nightmares. And this, to me, is formally where the movie ends being good. And look, while we have illustrated so many problems with the start of the movie, if you do not watch the end of the movie to see how they resolve, all those things almost make complete sense as you follow them beat for beat. It's only when the movie justifies why all those things happen that you're like, no, just no. Did I mention no? Like, none of those things land. And that's probably the biggest disappointment with the movie.
The only people we really know why they're doing what they're doing are Shinjin and Yukio. We don't really know why Logan's doing what he's doing until he takes over protecting Mariko in an active way. Up until then, it's why is he doing what he's doing? We don't know why he's doing anything. We don't know why Mariko tried to kill herself and is behaving so weird about being rescued and needing to be protected from the assassins that just interrupted her grandfather's funeral. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and if we'd gotten a halfway satisfying, even hand-waving answer, it would have made the film good instead of just, we almost had something.
It jumps and then just misses the cliff and then just goes plummeting off into the abyss. You're absolutely right. Shingen and Yuki are the only ones who we understand their motivations, and Noboru, but he's such a minor character, what those two are doing the entire movie and why they're doing it. Everybody else, you're absolutely right. Like, why does Mariko run for the cliff? Why is Wolverine sticking around? Why does Yoshida not just kidnap Wolverine immediately? Viper sort of says, I'm a nihilist and a chemist and a capitalist, or something along those lines. And it's like, all right, so is she doing it for money and this is just what she's good at?
She doesn't seem to be, like, terribly avaricious. There's got to be better ways than being the chief medical officer for a billionaire.
Yeah, like, what is she getting out of it? It's if she's like, I would have taken the healing factor. But she doesn't need the healing factor. She's got her own healing factor. Like, her motivations are never established.
It would have come in handy at the end of the movie for her, but...
That bears a question. Can you hang Wolverine?
I understand he's pretty well hung.
My point is that if you cut off oxygen to him and you just let him hang and you leave him there for like hours so his body just goes cold, or days, surely that would shut him down. Or maybe you don't know and I shouldn't call you surely.
Look, I think it's pretty much canon. He survives until the end of the universe, the end of the Marvel universe now. He survives being thrown into his sun. What I wonder about is what happens if you drop him in the Marianas Trench. I don't think Wolverine can swim because he's pretty heavy. Not a lot of buoyancy there with an adamantium skeleton. So sinks to the bottom, drowns, heals, walks 3 paces, drowns, heals, walks 3 paces. I assume that's how he gets out, right?
Or does he? And then again, so here's the crazy thing, which you've just hit on. He shouldn't be afraid of flying. He should be afraid of boats. He goes overboard. He is going straight down to the bottom to one of the most unpleasant... Oh, my God, have you seen The Old Guard with Charlize Theron? They drowned one of the immortals there, and she's just drowning and drowning for 60 years or something like that. If I was Logan, that would be one of my biggest fears. You're absolutely right. Like, he would probably wake up, crawl for a few inches, drown and die again, wake up, drown. Yeah, that would be my biggest fear if I was Logan. Being trapped somewhere. If I was Logan, I would be intensely claustrophobic. He's not super strong. Like, he's strong, but he's not Superman level strong. You put him in a prison, he's gonna stay there. What he's gonna do, eat his own flesh? I don't know quite how that works, but that would keep him alive. God, has anyone done that? We'd absolutely do that.
Look, DC Comics has Black Label now, which is explicitly for adults. Marvel used to have the Max line, which was explicitly for adults. I think maybe we leave questions like that to forums like these.
Yes, that's what I get for working on DC's Black Label. It has ruined me for life. I just had a crazy insight into this movie. Just out of the blue. We never got in this movie a Berserker Rage fight.
Yep.
We never see him go Berserker Rage.
The only time we really get that is in X2, in the mansion fight. And because that's PG and shot in the dark to keep it PG, it doesn't really satisfy that itch that fans want out of a Wolverine Berserker Rage on screen.
Did he go Berserker Rage in Origins?
When he comes out of the Weapon X adamantium infusion tank, he hits a Berserker Rage in that moment, but in terms of the current day plot in Wolverine Origins, no. Not even when he's fighting his lifelong arch enemy brother, who's just apparently murdered the love of his life, or one of them anyway.
And that should have been the thing that Victor should have known how to defuse. Wolverine goes berserker rage. Yes, finally. And then he has some clever way of dealing with it. Victor would know. Victor would have gamed this out in his head.
He would have had a way to take advantage of Logan in that state.
Even just to run him off through the woods. He goes berserker rage, so he just bolts. And Wolverine has to run after him, and he just runs out of steam, and then Victor attacks. Or he uses agility to get to the top of things, and Logan just starts going mental, and then wears himself out, and then Victor attacks. Like, just something, right?
Is the scene in Origins where he claws the fire escape to pieces a berserker rage?
I'm damned if I say yes, and I'm damned if I say no. Yes, I want a berserker rage moment. No, because it's stupid.
Okay, then. Let's go with no.
Let's go with no. All right, so Wolverine wakes up after getting to home base with Mariko, and this is where the movie just starts being goofy.
Wolverine pulls the guy out of the car as they kidnap Mariko, which is the information. Yukio pulls up. Then we have this driving montage.
Oh, and then they pull up. She says, "I have something to tell you." He goes, "Drive." They drive for hours. They were on a bullet train, which goes 300 miles an hour for a very long time.
Enough for several fights.
300
so this is plenty of time to have a conversation. You don't wait until he's opened the car door and has half stepped out.
Again,
we're here on this urgent mission, but I've wasted all this time and now you have to have some plot explained to you.
What were they doing the entire drive? Playing really urgent games of I Spy until finally she remembers what she has to tell him. Wait!
You've used Cherry Blossom 3 times, Yukio. Look at something else. That's a berserker rage.
Oh my god. And then tells him, "Oh, I've seen your death. You're lying on your back and you're covered in blood and you're holding your heart in your hand." And it's a fake out because that happens later. But, and this is cool, man. How does he die in Logan? Spoilers. How does he die in Logan? On his back, covered in blood, holding his daughter's hand. That's his heart. She is right.
You got to give the X-Men films some degree of credit for maintaining a continuity over a whole bunch of things that ignore each other's continuity whenever it's convenient. And when they pay off a moment like that, it really rewards fandom. It rewards this exercise we're doing now, where we're largely trying to backfill the plot holes in this movie so it makes a degree of sense. And it's rewarding that fandom with those little moments that makes a franchise worth it.
It really does. I think you've really hit on our mission statement there. While on one hand, we can really enjoy these things for their faults, but I always say that it's one of those things that for me, genre, and especially anything in genre, if you were to rate something out of 10, if it's genre, I'll give it immediately an extra 2 points. If it's a superhero film, I'll give it an extra 3 or 4 points out of 10. A 6 out of 10 superhero movie is a 10 out of 10 for me, just because I love the genre of superheroes. And we love this genre, and it's times like this where we're able to tie something together, even if it's unintentional. It still works, and that's that sort of fan constructivism that I really love. It's not all just tearing things apart. It's also finding things that show people why it's special to us.
Deconstruction is about understanding how something was built and why it works. It's not just to tear it to pieces.
I think one of the key things to deconstruction also is understanding why it works and how it works, and then putting those pieces back together in a way to show that you know that how it works. And a lot of people just tear things apart. Zack Snyder especially loves to tear things apart, cannot put things back together. And when you tear something apart, you need to interrogate to be like, well, what if this is the conceit? What if? A classic one would be is there needs to be a Clark Kent and he needs to wear glasses. You need to set that up. You can't just have Superman, same haircut, same everything, whack on a pair of glasses. Even Christopher Reeve had a completely different haircut, tan, changed his body language. There is that fantastic scene in Superman 2 where he transforms when Lois is out of the room into Superman and then back into Clark. It is built into the conceit. And Zack is so concerned about tearing these things apart, he doesn't worry about putting them back together in a way that will work. Just wants to keep pulling things apart.
You've reminded me of that great bit in All-Star Superman where quietly illustrates the Clark transformation and the hunching and the body language. And yeah, Superman 2 is already established. A great moment in Superman history. I love that way, the way that he incorporated the original vision for Superman into what was attempting to be a definitive vision of Superman. But it's probably genesis of that idea came from Morrison, because he always loves to do that sort of thing. His run on Batman was all about integrating even the 30s and 40s Batman with the Batman of today.
Grant Morrison has an idea that every ridiculous thing that has ever happened to Batman has happened to Batman in continuity. And he just revisits it and reworks it and reinvents it in such a way that it's just, it is like a whole other video. But very much recommend Grant Morrison's Batman work.
And All-Star Superman.
They go to Nibiru, and for some reason, the Minister of Justice has no security in his building. Wolverine and Yukio just walk straight in to see him partying with two working girls, I can only assume. And we learn that Shingen is behind it all, that he put a hit out on his own daughter. And then he throws him over the edge, and he just lands in a pool. Instead of, again, why do named characters always survive? Like, he's just killed so many thugs, but this guy is a dirtbag who tried to kill Mariko. Like, the movie lets him survive. What is that Hollywood rule?
Oh, because it was funny, because you get the line that he didn't know there was a pool there.
Which apparently is a reference to Diamonds Are Forever. There's a similar thing in that.
Plenty of tool, I believe.
Shida compound, Mariko and her father talk. Shingen learns that he wasn't his father's inheritor. William Lee and the ninjas attack, stopping Shingen from throwing his daughter over the cliff. That's the impression that I got, anyway. Do you get the impression that he was going to kill her to get the company back?
Oh, absolutely. He'd already put a hit out on her. We see him basically go crazy throughout this movie as his thwarted ambition drives him insane. Yeah, I totally believe he was about to murder her.
They send the ninjas in to rescue Mariko because they need her alive as bait to get Wolverine to the compound. She poisons Shingen but doesn't confirm the kill, and for some reason, of all the people she poisons, this doesn't kill him. So then, in the compound, Wolverine sees the surgical table, uses it to see the bug inside him, which I thought was a pretty cool moment. Then Shingen armors up and attacks, and the fight as Yukio is trying to protect Wolverine as he's digging his own heart out did not land for me. I was just like, it's not working for me. Did not enjoy that. I thought it was goofy as hell.
We're definitely getting into the goofy parts of the movie here, but I actually liked it. I didn't think it was the best martial arts fight in the movie, but it was well enough staged.
No, it was the way that they were all fighting around him while he's like digging into his own organs. Like, I just thought it was a ridiculous premise because he's not going to die. It's just fake drama. Just so we can pay off that one moment where she had the foreshadowing moment that it's not foreshadowing. It was all just fake drama. And
all drama is fake, I hate to tell you.
No, but emotions are real. If that's the whole point of going to see a movie, to feel real emotions, and the fact that I felt nothing real in that scene because it just seemed so ridiculous. The other way to do it, you have him fight Shingen, who when he kills him at the end and stabs the sword through his heart, kills the bug. And then you think he's going to die, and then the bug dies, and his healing factor kicks in. And it's boom, there you go, and you don't get this stupid little fight that goes around it, and you have something that actually ties together. Look, again, it's easy to armchair quarterback this sort of stuff.
It is, but the unintended consequence of that is that Yukio never really pays off as a character. That's her moment, that's her scene. She doesn't do a lot else in the movie apart from chauffeur Logan around. And
that fight between Logan and Shingen is amazing. As I said, the fact that he didn't drink for 36 hours before that, and he looks ridiculously good in that movie. He says he's finally hit how he felt visually Wolverine should look. And then he leaves him alive. You got to live with the guilt that you tried to kill your own daughter until he finally kills you, and then you got to kill him. Like, what? He's a bad guy. We already established he's a bad guy. He doesn't need to wallow in his guilt. He's got no guilt. He doesn't care. He was really quite happy to go ahead with this. In fact, all he's going to do now, you left him alive, is just come up with something else to do. And this is where we learn the facility is 500 kilometers away, which as a Canadian, he would know how far that is. As an American, he'd be like, how far is that?
Is that the other side of the road or the other side of the country? I don't understand.
And then you have the assault on the compound. Wolverine rides his bike all the way to the compound. Mariko confronts Viper, and then we see the Silver Samurai armor for the first time. And it's supposed to be cool, but this is the moment where I was just like, really? Is that where we're going? That was like my spider sense had been tingling up until that point, and that when I saw it, I'm just like, oh my god, we're doing the Ironmonger.
It really hit me how exactly Ironmonger-ish it was in this viewing. Because there's even the scene where you see the head in the suit. And, it looks exactly like Jeff Bridges when he's had the head of his suit ripped off. Why? Wouldn't your martial arts movie have been much more satisfying if you'd had a cool martial arts fight with a actual samurai, not some ridiculous robot?
I'm talking like a fight with Shingen in the compound on the multiple levels with his tachyon blade. That there is a fight. When you have something adamantium and he cuts through that and Wolverine realizes, I can't block this guy because his sword will go straight through my claws. You got yourself a fight, baby. James Mangold is always, oh, I need to weaken Wolverine. No, you got yourself a fight right there. And then if you have Wolverine sacrificing his claws to save Mariko or somebody, or Yukio or something like that, then you're like, oh my God, he did it. That's amazing. Rather than just this pointless, what you always call the Dark Mirror fight, where the hero has to fight the bigger, tougher Dark Mirror of themselves. And it's just so boring.
Particularly in 2013, where we've just had Iron Man do it twice, and Cap do it, Thor at least broke the mold.
With the Destroyer armor. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just him confronting himself and just this obstacle that can only be surmounted by him when he is truly worthy of Mjolnir. And it's not even a fight. It's just this cool spectacle at the end of Wonder Woman where she fights Ares and it just goes on and on. Thor just wrapped that thing up emotionally, really to the point. And again, Wolverine drops the ball like most other superhero movies, and you end up with this really pointless. But what gets me first is he's still approaching the compound. He sees Harada, William Lee. I was really hoping for your classic Wolverine hand fight of him leaping out of the window, rain of arrows everywhere, fighting guys on rooftops. Instead, he sees guys with arrows and he starts running. Are you serious? You're 400 pounds of metal, maybe? They shoot you, you just pull them. And that's in the comic. They actually get the idea for the comic because a bunch of hand jump him in his apartment and have ropes on their arrows. And he just starts rolling and twisting and pulling them all up. And he's got 6 reasons why those arrows ropes are not going to hold him also.
Looks really cool. I wanted to see so many more arrows, though. Frank Miller arrows darkening the sky. But yeah. It was a cool Wolverine in Japan fight. It gave us that moment.
It did. It didn't quite give me the rooftop fight, which sounds like the extended edition might have given me that with Yakuza, but that's not with ninjas. I really wanted him going in and out of buildings, fighting ninjas, knocking through walls, using their weapons against them, and then being whittled down, but also trying to stay away from Harada, who has the poison arrows. Like he gets one arrow and is, oh crap, and then you realize he's got to dodge poison arrows while fighting hand. That would have been a fun fight. It was a cool visual with the thing in the back. It doesn't make any goddamn sense, and it's not what Wolverine would do. So he wakes up and is in his contraption, holding his little hands, and Viper turns up wearing straight up her comic book costume. But it just seemed so inappropriate. Of all the times you're actually going to lean into the comics, you do it now, really, with this character in this moment. I understand she's a very good looking lady and you want to see her in as skin tight outfit as possible, and it's going to make the kids happy. But really, this is what you go for? It felt really jarring to me, but maybe that's my old man yelling at a cloud.
No, it was absolutely a part of the tonal shift the conclusion of this movie made. There's nothing that establishes an outfit like that apart from a reference to the comics. And yeah, look, Svetlana is a very attractive woman, but I don't think she did justice to the Viper character that I've read over the years.
Viper is not quite as operatic as Madame Mask, but she's up there. But on the other hand, she's also an incredibly clever, cunning character. And we really got none of that. It's a completely different character. The only thing we get is the costume. She is, as we've established, she has no powers in the comic. She's just a very cunning human being who's conditioned herself against poisons. I did like the way that the whole point of it was to get him to pop his claws. That I thought was very clever and it locks them in place. I really liked that because that was when you're just like, oh crap, like things are getting real. Like I thought that's a real plan. Oh, hey, this is Yukio. I'm bringing Kazuri to Japan. We land in 15 hours. Oh, let's get the device that is up at the compound and let's get it here. And then we'll poison him. And then we'll put him in the device to hold him until we can take him back there and then cut his claws. And then I can get in my big silver samurai outfit and cut his claws off. Why did you just get a guillotine, like a adamantium scissors?
Have it built into the machine. Just a cutting blade.
A lot cheaper. If adamantium was going to be like $1 million for 100 grams or something like that, I'm just saying you want to be effective about how you spend it. But yeah. So yeah,
they do establish that the suit is what's keeping him alive, but there's nothing established that any of the adamantium elements of the suit are required to do that.
And why wouldn't he be in some semblance of a suit when we first meet him if he needs to be kept alive? Why, knowing he's going to die, why wouldn't you just have that machine nearby rather than having to drive 500 k's away? Why wouldn't you have Yukio just bring Logan to the science compound and poison him there, put him straight in the machine, cut his claws off, drill, done? Like, once again, we'd make such better supervillains, dude.
Oh, look, I don't know about that. I don't have any powers, and my desire to have world domination has long since aged out of me. We don't need to be supervillains. Just give the script to 60 nerds and have them all compete to rip it apart. And I suppose you can't solve every issue. You're telling a story after all, and a pretty goofy one at the end. But it seems like so much of these could have been avoided with like just another pass at the script. And if they had the production of this nailed down to give Hugh 9 months to get into shape, that's a lot of time to be tossing the script back and forth. Oh, wait, it costs money. No, there we go. It costs money.
I'm just shocked that James Mangold has gone for such a grounded take. And that first half of the movie is so brilliantly executed. Like, to me, it's the way it all comes together at the end that pulls the start apart. But that start by itself, that first half until he gets with Mariko, is fantastic. And then you're totally right. It becomes a completely different film after that. And it is just absolutely goofy.
Oh, I got very much the sense that this was James Mangold work for hire. And when that made money, they suddenly brought him into the room. I believe Guillermo del Toro was attached to this picture at one point, and a litany of directors were considered and tested and briefly hired during various parts of the development. Because the elements that Mangold brought to this film all work. It looks amazing. The action is incredibly well staged. It's one of the best looking superhero films, and it's just a matter of lighting things well and intelligent shot choices. Mangold proved himself a real director, and look, yeah, no, I'm sure you've taken work where you've been given a script and it's, all right, I'll draw it. And I'm sure that's exactly how he felt.
Again, do not know for a fact, but I will back your theory 100% that is absolutely what happened, that he just worked with what he got, did the best he could, and you're absolutely right, got to have a seat at the table afterwards. So Mariko leaps in front of the blade of the Silver Samurai's tachyon blade as it's coming down, and he accidentally releases Wolverine. They have a drawn-out fight, and that is when my first WTF moment, when he cuts off Wolverine's claws. And I was just like, whoa, what? And immediately my brain is like, how's he going to get his claws back? How's he going to get his claws back? Because X-Men Days of Future Past, metal claws. I'm just asking for a friend. Would really like to know. Bryan Singer was asked, and he just brushed it off.
I thought the answer to that was coming when Mariko picks them up. During the climax, she spots them and picks them up. And I thought, okay, here we go. He'll fire up the blade and use them to weld the claws back on or something.
Or they used the machine that made the Silver Samurai to then put new claws on him, made out of the Silver Samurai's armor or something like that. And I just thought there'd be something like that. And again, all these times I was with you, I'm like, how are they going to bring back his claws? How are they going to give him his claws back? Like, we just came up with a bunch of plausible options. They made the armor somehow, right? Which meant they can smelt and mold adamantium. You got a whole ton of it there lying around.
Once the bone heals, he can pop the claws again, and whatever's left of the adamantium was there for them to work with without having to cut the skin off the hand or anything weird like that. they really needed to do was dip it in hot adamantium and then get an adamantium knife sharpener to finalize things.
Not for nothing, but I noticed in the Wolverine comic, as Frank draws them, he draws them more like thick knives that sort of come out of the middle of his knuckles too. The claws were different in this movie too. What did you think of them? They had the sort of the solid backs on them. But yeah, what do you think of the claw design?
It seemed a lot more film reel. Comic reel takes a lot of leeway. And the way Frank Miller draws those knives, there's no way they hide in your wrists.
There really isn't. I don't know if I like having the backs of them being blunt. I feel like Wolverine not being able to do whoops, I just took my light. Wolverine not being able to do backs is like a pretty significant problem.
I had never thought that both sides were equally sharp.
Always. Like he cuts backwards all the time. I guess it would make sense because I guess in the movies too, he stabs people and tosses them. If they're blunt, he could pick them up. And so I guess this makes movie sense, but in the comics, I always get the impression they were sharp on both sides. So then we go to the airport and he says goodbye to Mariko, who's now the head of Yoshida Industries. Fukio gets a box that never gets opened in the theatrical cut. I've only found out what was in there by watching other reviews and seeing the proper goddamn costume inside. Why would you cut that? Like, why?
It was cut out of the version I've watched. I know they shot it, but I don't think it was ever actually released.
I think it's in the deleted
it's not.
I just found it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's not part of the extended cut.
Again, it's not part of any official cut. I think it's just a deleted scene, and it looks really good. They did a great job on that costume. It's the original brown and orange costume. We don't get the unboxing, and then apparently the mid-credit sequence is set 2 years later. I just have so many problems with this because it's like it's been written by the Days of Future Past guys. Where is Yukio? Why doesn't Magneto and Professor X approach him together and just be like, hey, Logan, hey, what's going on, guys? And why wouldn't you wait till he's through airport security when Professor X doesn't have to freeze everybody because Magneto's showing off?
Yeah, it was silly, but it was silly in a way that even the goofy finish of the movie itself wasn't trying to reach.
It was another level of just stupid, where you're just like, this is so pointless. Like, why would you go to one of the most security monitored venues and make contact with Wolverine there? That is just the dumbest thing to do.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we all lost our memories again for 6 minutes and all the camera footage is gone. Oh, just those wacky mutants on your way.
Oh, let's just launch all the planes anyway, because that's what would happen in a post 9/11 world.
Oh my God.
You could tell it wasn't part of this film. Left every element hanging and was only there to set up that, Chuck and Mags are back in the next one.
The strongest thing about Wolverine is he just can't stop caring. He tries to pull himself away from the world, but that's what sort of gives him his strength. We never get why he decides what changes him at the end of the movie. We never get that moment where it's, yes, sometimes people will die, but it's a connection to other people that makes us stronger. Chris Claremont's writing freaking nails it in the story where Wolverine realizes that everyone sees him as an animal and he has to figure out what makes him a man. At the end of issue 3, where he decides to come back, the key isn't winning or losing, it's making the attempt. I may never be what I thought what I ought to be, want to be, but how will I know unless I try? Sure, it's scary, but what's the alternative? Stagnation, a safer, more terrible form of death, not of the body, but of the spirit. An animal knows what it is and accepts it. A man knows what he is, but he has questions, he dreams, he strives, he changes, and he grows. And then, I'm just going to finish it because it's so great. It's Chris Claremont just crushing it. You took my dreams from me, Shingen, but only for a time because I'm a man, Shingen, not a beast. A man, and that mistake is going to cost you. It's so good. It's a great miniseries still. And there's no moment like that. Like I know that is literally Wolverine telling us that, but that is also the style of comics at that time. And in this movie, he never figures out why he wants to live. And Yukio at the end of the movie is like, where do you want to go? She gave us a plan. And he'd be like, I'm going back to my cave in the Yukon. There's no reason to just not go there and keep drinking.
I agree it wasn't well dramatized narratively, but that's not where he's going. He's explicitly going back to the war, the fight, to be a soldier again.
But why?
Which thematically they didn't set up at any point in the movie, but is definitely part of his history.
But that's my point. You got the point of the movie is to take him out of the fight at the start and then give him a reason to go back to the fight. And I did not get that reason from the movie. The Wolverine from the movie would still just go back to his cave. For those of you who can't see, Scott is making sexual gestures.
I can't imagine what image just conjured into listeners' minds there. My point, though, is that he makes a connection with Marika. He starts to feel something for her again, and for a person again. He makes a connection with Yukio and develops a bond with her. He's plunged back into the world and realizes he still wants to fight for it. It's not dramatized, and it doesn't come across very explicitly, but we can make sense of some of the science fiction of it by applying logic and filling in holes with headcanon. We can do that here too if we want.
But that again is the flaw of the movie. I just feel like there's so much headcanon going on there that you get that. Yeah. It's great. That we can piece together something in our heads of what Yoshida's plan might have been is great for us. But for most people watching it,
most people won't bother.
No.
If the questions occur to them, they'll go, oh, that's dumb, and then move on with their lives, which, to be honest, is the correct response. What we're doing here is dysfunctional.
But so much more fun than just going on with our lives. I saw one guy who believed that was not Jean, but the Phoenix Force projecting itself, trying to get Wolverine to kill himself.
That's great headcanon.
It's great headcanon. Look, and I can't argue against him, but to me, it's just like... The fact that this movie is like so loose in its storytelling means that all these things are absolutely correct. No matter how far-fetched I think it is, I'm like, I can't say you're wrong because the movie just left too many doors ajar.
I suppose it's theoretically possible that they're explicitly stating that there is an afterlife and that afterlife can reach us here on Earth. It's lazy, a headcanon, but there isn't anything in the movie telling us what's actually happening.
Even when I do my comics, I write it, I think it's great, I lay it out, and I go, oh no, there's a problem, and I fix it there. I understand when you're making film, you don't really get the opportunity to do that. I know it's one of the reasons why James Gunn and Zack Snyder storyboard everything, so they can have that stage to iterate on, to see a lot of those problems. So here's my problem with the film overall. Obviously, it got super goofy, but just I like to hold films up to their own logic. And this whole thing is that, why did he turn Yoshida down at the start? He is at his absolute depths, his nadir, his dark night of the soul, where he should have been genuinely considering that maybe it's time. Maybe I've had enough of a run on this planet. By him saying no, it just invalidates the entire question and core of the movie. And so you don't want to die, but you don't want to live? Like, where are you, Logan? What's going on in your mind? And I guess what gets me is that he never, over the course of the movie, finds a reason to live, which is what he should have gotten from Mariko. He should have learned about duty, I'm making sex gestures again. My point is...
Sorry, mate. Please continue.
One of the core things about Wolverine in the comics is that he is a samurai. And when he goes to Japan, he does become, in that bit that I read out, he learns what it is to become a samurai. And he should have learned from Mariko that the thing greater than himself is duty to others. And then just by doing that duty is more important that I will marry him. I will do whatever I have to keep my family going. I will take on Yoshida Industries. I will do the best I can. I'll do that all for family, for honor, for duty. And for him to remember family and honor and duty, because he has a family. He lost his honor. He forgot about duty. These are all three things that would have really motivated Wolverine to get back into the fight. And not one of them is mentioned in this movie.
You can headcanon some of the subtext into text, but sometimes you need it in the text. And because it's not there, there's no satisfying conclusion. There's no moment of growth or realization. There's no path to empathizing with his journey because it's essentially arbitrary.
You get an enemy that's trying to take his immortal life away, but then it just becomes just another bad guy. There is no struggle. Here's the thing. That's where Mariko should have been. In Hollywood terms, they call it the ally. Someone with you who he can model off. In Rocky, Adrian is the one that teaches Rocky to just keep getting back up. That's what he learns from her, and that's what gets him through to the end of the movie. And this, he doesn't even have to beat the bad guy like that. If he has that journey and he manages to save Mariko, and he remembers when she's, can you say, I have a family to get back to. And that's duty. That's what you've taught me. And I have to be back there. These people need me. They are my family. It is my duty. I have to go. And she'd be like, I get it. She'd be like, here's your plane. And at the end of the day, what did they add to him? They put him through all this and they take his metal claws away? What's the point? What's the point? You made him less cool. Thanks. Thank you. Well done.
That's very pessimistic. The point was all the cool stuff up until they got to the secret base. The point was how good the movie was until then, even with all the weaknesses we pointed out. There was an energy and a propulsion to the narrative. There was many competent performances and a couple of pretty good ones. There were interesting characters. There was an exotic, in inverted commas, setting. There were all the elements there. And it was, rewrite that last scene once they get to the mountain a couple more times, and I swear this would be a great movie.
Yeah. Look, the comic is fantastic. I really recommend checking out the comic. Sure, is it a little overblown with the captions? That's just Chris Claremont's style. Guy wrote X-Men comics for 25 years, knew Logan better than anybody. You got Frank Miller drawing it, who goes between just incredibly rendered stuff to just beautiful gestural storytelling. The only thing that doesn't age well these days is Lynn Varley's colors. I'm not even going to say it's her colors. It's the way that they've been translated through the new Marvel print, where they've just gone to this crazy hyper saturation. Whereas I really feel like Lynn was coloring for that faded paper stock that's off-white, that just levels everything out. And then when you put everything on true white and up the saturation, you end up with something that's a little hard to read. Not her fault. Good read.
I'm not a fan of when they go back and recolor these things either. I don't think we've solved that issue with digital about the archive of it all.
Jose Villarubia, if you ever follow him on Facebook, he has essays about how that they need to take into account what the color that was printed on the page, not what the colorist put down to plan for. That's not what the colorist was trying to do. The colorist knew what it would look like planned, and then what it looks like when it's actually printed were two completely different things. It's an art to it. Highly recommend the comic. And in that comic, Shingen is the bad guy, and he sets Wolverine up. Wolverine is there to rescue Mariko, who he already has a relationship with. Understand that doesn't fly in the movie. You've got to set that up for the first time. And he frames Wolverine. He drugs him, and in front of Mariko, challenges him to a friendly sparring match with bokken, wooden swords. But Shingen is attacking Wolverine to kill. And Wolverine, drugged, is barely holding him off, has forgotten how to use the sword, but he knows this guy is trying to kill him. So he throws his sword away, pulls out his claws, and because he's so drugged, Shingen is still able to beat him. But Mariko's like, why did you try and kill my dad? He just challenged you to a friendly match. And Wolverine's on the streets and just working his way through the underworld. And it's just wonderful manipulation right from the get-go that we never see in this movie. And there's a couple other moments that are really good like that. Does it look as good as this movie? No, absolutely not. Is it a better script? Yes. Yes, it is.
Does it look as good as this movie is an interesting question. I wish I'd gone back to the comic and been able to reappraise the art, but I remember it being pretty dramatic and well executed at the time.
We are comparing something that Frank Miller had to do, a single guy had to do on a very tight deadline, to a massively budgeted spectacle with hundreds of people involved, with millions and millions of times the budget. Is Frank Miller brilliant and genius?
15,000 people worked on this movie.
For all of Frank's skill, is he 1,500 artists good? That's up to you. I think this movie, for all its faults, I think this movie looks really good. It's just bubblegum. It tastes great, but it has, at the end of the day, had no nutritional value for me. Didn't bring anything to the character, didn't question itself, didn't give us a great dark mirror. The main guy's plot made no sense. Mariko had no active part in the story. Logan himself had no question that he needed to answer, no journey to go on, and no reason for him to go back to the X-Men afterwards. Did I feel he finally had a reason to live when he sends Jean's ghost off? No, I didn't. He was just like, oh, I remember what it's like to be fighting. I should keep doing this. And Scott's just... Man, look, if the whole theory of the movie is that Logan just needed to get laid, then I'm okay with that too. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Wolverine. We are going to wrap this up with Logan. There is a part of me, though, that really wants to do...
Are we doing Days of Future Past?
Let's do it. Man, this has been a blast. Thank you again so much for joining me on this, dude. I really appreciate it. Even a movie like this, where tonight I was just like, this is so 7 out of 10. And that's 7 minus 3 because of my bias towards superhero movies. So I know this movie just was really not very good. And I was like, what are we going to talk about? But had a really interesting discussion about a whole bunch of the structure of the movie, questions of the movie, what makes Wolverine tick, the things that we want as Wolverine fans. And yeah, I'm with you. I really want to see Days of Future Past, actually. That's what this made me want to see. I'll give it that.
I think I like it a lot more than you do. I think the things it does well are good enough to justify the time I spent rewatching it and thinking about it and engaging with it, even though it's not by any means a perfect movie. Here's comics Wolverine on the screen.
That's what I said at the start, man. That's what I meant when I said it was Apex Wolverine. This is the closest we get to an actual decent story featuring Hugh Jackman, looking fantastic, sounding fantastic. He really knows who and what the character is, and is in a story that doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's still, as I said, that first hour and change is awesome. Awesome. It just doesn't stick the landing. But the way that Mangold creates this world up until then, until you're like, why is he here? Why is he doing? Before you're asking all those questions, I was having a blast, man. I was super excited to watch the end of it, and I was just jaw open. And I don't watch these things and laugh at them. I know some people just start laughing. I get really sad when there's so much hope built up at the start of a movie. As you said, 1,500 people worked on this.
The version I watched has a tag.
Oh.
The making of this film supported 15,000 jobs during the time they're making very public piracy is bad things.
And none of those people want to make a bad film. And so for me, when it starts really just going off the rails, I just get really sad. It just breaks my heart that so much hope and potential just falls over in studio committee glad handing of look, and I don't believe it's the writer's faults too. I believe that what they put on paper was so much smarter than what it was then neutered down to be. That they had solutions to questions that we have now that were removed from the screenplay because some, as you always put it, bean counter didn't know and didn't care and didn't think anybody else would care. That's how it works. As you keep saying all the time, the fact that we get any movies at all, any good movies at all is a miracle. I just want to thank you again. I'm glad that you could consider it still just a worthwhile piece of your time going back and watching these things.
When I compare it to the Captain America movie we got in the 90s and the Trial of the Incredible Hulk in the 80s and Batman and Robin and Catwoman and Elektra, this would be in the bottom quarter of an MCU list, but it would still be like very much in the top half, if not top third, of superhero cinema. And if you're going to be a fan of a genre, then you've got to give the very goods a bit more space to be very good and get what you can out of them, because there aren't all that many.
You're totally right. If this had come out before X1, if this was like the launch for the X franchise, I would have crapped myself with ecstasy as the greatest superhero thing I'd ever seen since Superman 77. I agreed. We are so spoiled these days. So wonderful that we can actually look at these and be like, hey, these ones are superhero films, but are also really great. These are superhero films, not so great. I think it's stuff like this, superhero film, and it's fun. It's fun. Don't think about it too hard. Just go along and have fun. Still maintain that first hour just rocks, though. Rocks. Loved every bit of it.
It's so worth it for that first half.
Yeah.
I really think it is. Especially if you've never seen it. It's cool. There's these comics elements coming to life on screen. Yeah, it doesn't live up to it, but what does?
Endgame. The Avengers.
Avengers 1, Captain America First Avenger. Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy. We have a litany now.
Yes.
We didn't.
Yes.
We were starting to get them. This came out after the Avengers.
This is true.
Compared to the legacy that the X-Men franchise had left us with at this point, I think we did pretty well out of this.
Yeah. I'm very excited to see what they're going to do with the X-Men and how they're going to bring them into the Marvel Universe. My biggest question, the Marvel Universe is full of superheroes. The average dude in the MCU knows superheroes. So why do they hate mutants? That's what I'm really curious to see how they're going to communicate that.
because superheroes are rich and handsome.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on the road to Deadpool Wolverine. I really enjoyed going back and watching this movie. Thank you again, Scott, for going through it again. I'm glad it was valuable for you. I'm glad that, I know you wouldn't put it on in your own time, but doing this together and having these discussions. We do this more with different sorts of movies, because I'm finding it really easier to do this. Like, I don't write pages and pages of notes anymore. So yeah, it's taking a lot less time. God forbid I'm getting better at this.
I never bothered to write notes at all. Anytime I can drag you down to my level of unprofessionalism, awkwardness, and sex jokes, I'm going to take advantage of those opportunities. Thank you for being less diligent and professional, Jace, is what I'm saying.
You're welcome, I think. Oh my God. And we'll see you all for X-Men Days of Future Past as we make our way to Deadpool 3. Good night, everybody. Thank you. There are two reasons why me, a comic book writer and artist, has partnered with Notes and Clips, a stationery company. 1, they make great stuff. And 2, Rob, the panel's Destiny 2 guru, is the co-founder and fulfillment officer for Notes and Clips. So if you're looking for a present for yourself or for someone else that is actually made by an honest-to-traveler Destiny 2 gamer, then look no further than Notes and Clips, my fellow Guardian. Notes and Clips are a small family fire team designing, selecting, sourcing, and most importantly, personally handcrafting fantastic stationery, organizational stickers, and pens. Notes and Clips is just the perfect present for anyone you know, like buying someone an exotic engram, IRL. Let me show you their awesome stuff. You've got these awesome stickers that are so much fun for someone younger, while these stickers are perfect for someone just trying to survive being an adult, or maybe who's getting married. I honestly believe that all big events should be planned for with these planner journals and these stickers. That way you'll not only have the amazing memory of the event, but you'll have a beautiful journey to remember it by. And these stationery boxes are perfect for birthdays, end of year holidays, or just plain saying thank you on Mother's Day, Father's Day, or heck, even for that fire team leader that watched you flail against a wall for 40 minutes on Whisper of the Worm. Thank you, Rob. Notes and Clips have almost 30,000 missions under their belt and around 6,000 reviews that would make even Cade 6 blush. Rob will get your order and will personally transmit it to you. How soon depends on what you ordered and where it's going. Here's the breakdown from this side. Buy someone you know something nice and know that you're supporting a fellow Destiny 2 player and their family at the same time. I don't care how many times Rob holds me through Voltaglass trying to get me Vex Mythoclass. I still don't have it, Rob. I am an artist, and I have a rep, and I'll put it all on the line and say the quality is so flat out incredible that Ada's Loom will be jealous. Meanwhile, the price is quite frankly a steal. And if you use the code Badower25, you'll get the largest current site-wide discount. That is Rob's and my shout out to a fellow Guardian. Notes and Clips are your go-to gamer present for non-gamers, like a stealth gamer present. But you'll know, I'll know, but they won't. Thank you, Rob, and Notes and Clips for all your support.
Cat Lady. It's a double dry hopped IPA from Mountain Culture. It's a collab with a Canadian mob, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, Bellwoods Brewery. Basically, they traded recipes. Bellwoods made one of theirs, and this is actually a recipe from the Bellwoods Brewery, but made by Mountain Culture.
I totally forgot to get Canadian beers. Kicking myself. So you're bringing the Canada at the moment.
Canada. Yep, that's a real place.
I was drinking wine and I just couldn't. Every sip was just absolutely killing me. I'm like, I need a beer. So I found something on point. A Sapporo. I love Japanese beers. You're Canada. I'll bring Japan.
We've got it covered. That works out really well.